few remarks, then we'll open up to plenary, then attend to whatever other issues that might arise, including maybe those that we've not touched on. Yes.
Thank you very much, CS. Good evening. And thank you very much for all of us for finding time to be with us this evening. I think the CS has captured the essence of why we are here and the critical aspects of the things that has brought us here. The only thing I'll just do a quick recap of that journey that has brought us up to this point, where we have come from, where we are, and slightly looking at what we need to do as we go into the future. And as already mentioned, our first critical education reform post-independence came in 1985 when we transited to 844, and as a way in which as a country at that time we said we needed more practical oriented education. And in the first few years, as at 1992, there was a first review for us to look at it. It came to our attention as Kenyans that there was overload on what we were learning and what we were giving our children. And therefore, we thought that there was need for us to relook at ourselves, and that is why we had a small review in 1992 on our education system. In 2009, again, Kenyans thought that we needed to reflect, and we did a summative evaluation of the 844 system, because we thought there was something that we needed to still improve, and therefore the journey continued. And as we are all aware, we gave ourselves a new constitution in 2010. And when we gave ourselves a constitution in 2010, post the constitution, we thought we needed to align so many things into the new constitution. And education was one of those aspects that needed alignment into the new constitution. And as we are all aware, then our minister then of education appointed two committees. One was led by Professor Some that looked at higher education and science and technology, and another committee was led by Professor Odhiambo, who looked at basic education. And that is where the critical journey that we are going through today critically started, because Professor Odhiambo did and went round the country, and Kenyans then recommended that we totally needed to change our education system. And that is where we started this journey that we are in today. Because from there, among the things that Professor Odhiambo recommended was that we needed more to look not so much into how much knowledge we have accumulated and how much we can reproduce, but what we can do with the knowledge that we have acquired, and therefore looking at competencies and skills. And the concept of competence-based education came, and therefore the competence-based curriculum. And the whole structure that we are looking at today, the 2 years in preschool, the 6 years in primary school, 3 years in junior school, 3 years in senior school, and a minimum of 3 years in tertiary education came in as a recommendation from Professor Odhiambo. In 2014, 2015, 2016, then the implementation of some of those recommendations became critical. And in 2015 is when we started, and some of us who are here, including Zamburi, including Jegere, and quite a number of people who are at KICD, started a journey of doing a needs assessment. A needs assessment was done in 2014, 2015. In 2016, we had our first national conference that informed our way forward. And as already mentioned by CS, in 2017 now the critical journey started. And our first pilot was done in 2017. And out of the lessons learned from the first pilot that we did in 2017, in 2018 we did a national pilot. I'm giving this journey so that we can appreciate that CBC didn't just happen, that it was quite a thought process that was put into it. So in 2017, 2018, we did our final pilot, which was a national pilot. And in 2019 is when we did a rollout at grade 3. And it is the same year that we did our first national summative assessment through the Kenya Early Years Assessment at grade 3, because we wanted to appreciate the results that we had already given ourselves through the pilot and what we were thinking about it now that we were rolling out. And as we are aware, thereafter we have done quite a number of school-based assessment up to what the CS said in 2022. We did our first Kenya primary school education assessment, which was a summative assessment. And this summative assessment accounted for 40% of the assessment score for our primary school. 60% were done by our teachers in the school-based assessment. And one good thing that Njegere will tell us later is that when an analysis was done between the school-based assessment and the summative assessment, there was very close correlation between the two, meaning that our teachers were quite objective in the school-based assessment in our assessing our children. The CS has already talked about the anxiety that was there in 2022. We were doing the first CAPSEA. We needed to transit our children to junior school. There was a lot of questions as to whether our children were going to a secondary school, were they going or remaining in primary school. And that is why, as the CS said, the first thing that our president did upon swearing in on the 13th of September is that on the 29th of September, he created the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform so that we could be able to address the anxieties of Kenyans. On 3rd of August, the report was delivered to the president, and he directed the minister then to implement it immediately. And the implementation immediately from October, November, upon receiving that report, then started. And that is how we ended up now having our junior school in our primary schools. And thereafter, they did recommendation which the CEO will be telling us about rationalization and the issues that we needed to do immediately so that we could be able to implement and meet the expectations of Kenyans. So once again, I don't want to say so much, but what I want to say is that in that same 2022, we quickly again did guidelines on how we shall be able to deliver to our children in junior school. So once again, CS, I don't want to say so much, is about what do we do going forward. You have talked about in what happens in 2024. In July, the CEO of Kenya National Examination Council will tell us that we did a pilot on the Kenya Junior Secondary School Education Assessment. In this same 2024, the CS has told us we are doing 16,000 classrooms. In this same year, 2024, we have done the textbooks that are needed by our children. In this same year, we have done guidelines on how we shall place our children in senior school. We have also done guidelines which will guide us on management of senior school. So these are the critical things, and these guidelines will be going to our our stakeholders who are the teachers and all of us in January so that we can validate these particular guidelines. So what happens in 2025? Because that is another very critical year for all of us. In 2025, as already mentioned, that is the year when we shall have had a full cycle of early years, that is ECD, the 2 years. We shall have done a full cycle of our primary school for 6 years, and we shall have done a full cycle of our junior school. It is the year that we shall be doing an assessment of the first 9 years. It is the year that our children will be making choices into the pathways that they want to go into. It is the year that our children will be prepared to transition to senior school. And it is also the same year that we shall be preparing our senior schools to receive our children to senior school. It is the same year that we shall have done adequate simulations to know how many of our children will be doing the STEM pathway, how many of our children will be doing social sciences, how many of our children will be doing arts and creatives. So this is the year, 2025, which is so critical to all of us because the summation of what we have been doing in the last 9 years will be defined as we do the final transition within the basic education subsector. So at that particular point, then in November, we shall be doing the Kenya Junior School assessment. In December, we shall be doing placement to junior school. And in January 2026 is the critical year that we now transition our children, and actual transition will be happening. All these years we have been doing progression. We progressed from PP1, PP2 to grade 1. We progressed from grade 6 to grade 7. But now we are going to do an actual transition from one level now and one domiciling point of the junior school and primary school to our secondary schools, which will be senior schools. So it is so a critical year that will define all that we have been doing in competence-based education. And it is the year, therefore, that we have to work with our stakeholders to ensure that that transition will be smooth at grade 9 and later in grade 10. So CS, I don't want to go beyond that particular point. I just wanted to see the journey that we have covered so that the details on issues of teachers, the details on issues of curriculum, and the details on issues of assessment will be dealt with by our CEOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PS. That's a very good presentation, giving us the history of the progression, just to show that the government didn't wake up one morning and say, we are going to do CBC. It was a journey, well studied, well researched, teams went out, assessments were done, and this particular program then became necessary. I'll now give the opportunity to the CEO, TSC, to say one or two things on teachers.
Thank you, Waziri. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will start tonight by assuring the country that the Teacher Service Commission has fully prepared our teachers to transition our learners to grade 9 without a hitch. The peers and the minister have talked about the rest of the issues, so I'll very briefly restrict myself to what we have done with the teachers to ensure this preparedness. One, we know that our teachers are very well trained in our colleges and universities. And once a professional, you, in all professions anyway, you are tooled and skilled. And these skills we are given when we are trained and we are told, then assist you to adopt to changes even when they come. And the only thing that we are doing with our teachers is tweak it a little when we are retooling them, because they are already trained. Let me talk about the implementation of the CBC by saying that TSC has recruited and deployed public primary school and junior school teachers, both under internship programs and under permanent and pensionable terms. The expected teacher requirement for grade 7 to 9, if we were to staff it adequately, is 149, 350 teachers. However, the government through TSC has recruited 76,928 teachers, and this makes 51.5% of the requirement. And what we should note here is that although we have that shortage, it is that in 1.5 years, the government has done 51.5% of the requirements in junior secondary. And this shows the resolve of government in trying to transit our learners through the CBC seamlessly. And therefore, the projected teacher shortage is estimated to be 72,422, which is 48.5%. So you can see we have done more than what we are missing. And if government has done this in 1.5 years, then you can see that the government will be working very hard with the TSC at the forefront to ensure that the 48.5% is achieved in the shortest time possible. Now, the government has also provided funds to recruit and convert 46,000 teacher interns in primary, junior, and secondary school teachers to permanent and pensionable terms. And these teachers, of course, now, starting this January, will now transit to PNP and not the interns as they were before. Out of the 46,000 teacher interns, 39,550 teachers were recruited specifically for junior school and have now been turned into P&P. To further bridge this shortage at junior school, the TSC looked at the qualified primary school teachers, because we have qualified primary school teachers who went back to college after their P1 course. They have all the requisite requirements. 8,378 qualified primary school teachers have now been deployed to junior secondary to try and bridge this gap. The government went further and allocated TSC 4.8 billion to engage 20,000 additional intern teachers whom we have now recruited. We have given them letters, we have issued them letters, and will be in schools in January as we open our schools. So you can see that the total number of teachers now recruited and deployed to handle junior secondary is 76,928. And that's quite a substantive number in only 1.5 years. So this is aimed at responding to these needs in the junior secondary. So after recruiting, the other thing that the TSC or the government has done through TSC is retooling of teachers. As I have explained, our teachers are very well trained and they are tooled and skilled. In fact, in the past you saw, even during the COVID epidemic or when we have had a few challenges here and there, our teachers adapt to change because they are very well trained. However, the government felt this is a new reform. And so TSC was given money to retool these teachers in curriculum-based, competence-based curriculum and competency-based assessment. I think we have the CEO, Nick, he can talk about that. And so we have been retooling our teachers on these two since 2019 on a regular basis. And just to give you a summary of this, about retooling our teachers in the new CBC and the CBA, between April 2019 to September 2021, we had trained a total of 292 teachers, just to ensure that we have this seamless transition as we adopted the CBC. Now, going to junior secondary, the overall total number of teachers retooled between May and November, just the other day, 2024, is 60,642. The last training was conducted in November this year, specifically to prepare teachers for transitioning learners to grade 9. That's just a short snapshot of what we have done to teachers to ensure this seamless transition. There have been challenges, of course, like in all new systems. You must have teething problems, and this is what has happened. This we are continuing to do in the sector and the TSC so that we get the funding to close this gap. We have also come with an innovation, and I'm saying this knowing too well that no technology can actually replace a teacher in class. However, we are a developing country. So we have come up with live streaming of lessons where we have a satellite school, a principal school, and then a satellite schools, so that we have one principal school that can teach, or the lessons are live streamed in like 5 or 4 other schools, just to try and make sure that learners do not stay without a teacher. We have also been collaborating because, as you know, one of the mandate of the Commission is to advise national government on the requirements of teachers. We have been working very, very closely with the Ministry of Education and universities to train teachers in the new learning areas, so that as we progress, we get teachers in these new learning areas. We are also undertaking teacher induction, mentorship, and the coaching to manage change, because most of these issues we are hearing really in junior secondary in regard to our teachers, it's just the change thing. I mean, we want to do things like they were always done, and change usually is a bit difficult. So we are inducting our teachers, we are mentoring them, we are coaching them, so that they can adapt to this change, and we move on. We are also, lastly, this current recruitment of the 20,000 intern teachers that we have just concluded, and these teachers you report in January, what we have done is prioritize the recruitment of science teachers, because, as you know, there have been comments here and there that we have been recruiting only arts teachers. So this recruitment prioritized the recruitment of science teachers, so that these children can have a wide array and not only science teachers, but also technical subjects, so that they have a wide array of the new learning areas. And so, in a nutshell, that is what we have done, and we are working very hard to ensure that we get there and that these learners are transited seamlessly. Thank you.
Thank you, Daktari. Thank you very much. It's therefore clear to me that even at TSC, everything possible is being done to ensure that we have enough teachers. Where we do not have the right number, we are retooling them, we are training them, we are ensuring that there is the right number to ensure that the grade 9, as a transition, there will be somebody teaching them, that they are not going to be in school without teachers. The government is doing everything possible, including putting in lots of money to ensure that 51% of teachers are employed within 1.5 years, the highest number that has ever been employed in this country within that specific period. And in fact, I realized that the effect of that was that in 2022-2023, because of that employment, the application for the education program in our universities rose tremendously. I think 33% of all the students that were admitted to universities in 2023-2024 financial year, academic year, were in education. So it shows that there is something that is happening in that sector. We have a few more minutes before plenary. Let me give Dr. Njengere, the KNC CEO, a chance to say a word or two, and then KICD, then we move to plenary so that we can deal with the burning issues. Briefly.
Okay, thank you very much, CS. I think for me, from NEC, I'll speak to the critical milestones that we have navigated. As the PS explained, when the rollout of the CBC started in 2017, that is during the pilot, NEC received a basic education curriculum framework, and in 2018, NEC came up with a competency-based assessment framework. And maybe what we need to state is that this is the first time in this country, CS, stakeholders, that any change in our basic education was preceded by a framework. In the 844 and in the previous system we had, we didn't have a framework. So in this case, KICD had a basic education curriculum framework, and NEC used that framework to develop the assessment framework. Then come 2018, as KICD was concluding the national pilot, NEC also did its own pilot. So the grade 3 monitoring learner progression was preceded by a pilot. And I think this is also the first time in this country that assessments were preceded by a pilot. And every other subsequent assessment, whether it is KIPSEA or the Kenya Junior that we are waiting to do next year, as the PS said, they were based on a pilot. Now there is something that the PS said about the validity and reliability of the school-based assessments. And Bwana Nzioka is here. What I want to disabuse, and which speaks to, I don't know what we need to do as a country, believing in ourselves and bridging the trust deficit that I don't know where it came from. We seem to have an issue in trusting teachers as professionals. So there was this fear that if we ask teachers to administer the school-based assessments without the presence of a supervisor, an invigilator, and a police officer, are they going to be professional? Are they going to be objective? And from 2019, every year, we conduct these school-based assessments. And I can assure you from NEC that we get a normal curve. A normal curve which shows that the teachers are very objective and very professional. So I think we also need to encourage and motivate the teachers by ceding from this attack, which is not based on facts, that teachers might. So once you tell a professional that I fear you are going to do the wrong thing, I don't know what you're doing to that professional. So I think it's time for us to encouraging the teachers to do what they are doing, and so far they have done a very good job. The next issue is about what PS mentioned, about the junior school assessment, which will be done next year for the summative. But so far, the children who are in grade 8 and moving to grade 9 next month, they have already done their SBS in grade 7 and grade 8, which means that the assessment they'll be sitting for in grade 9, end of grade 9 next year, is not going to have the same stakes that KCPE used to have, because KCPE, the final assessment used to account for 100% of your marks. But this time round, they have already done their SBA in grade 7. They have done their SBA in grade 8. So actually we can almost start to see what these children are likely, how they are likely to perform, even as they wait to sit for their summative assessments. And as the PS said, we also have a questionnaire that we are going to be administering, because we've also been reducing the opportunities for these children based on purely achievement tests. So we also want to explore both their interests and their other personal attributes that will speak to the kind of track and pathway that they will pursue in senior school. And we've been having a meeting with the junior school teachers in Naivasha. So we are orienting them on how those all those assessments will be done, the questionnaires, and I'm sure next year by around March, as the PS promised, we are going to have a very seamless process of how that transition is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Professor, one or two.
Thank you very much, our Cabinet Secretary and all our delegates, protocol observed. Good evening. I want to welcome all of us to the Institute. You can see we have just a brand new auditorium. You're the first people to sit on it. Karibuni sana. CS, thank you very much for organizing this so that we can speak to competency-based education. And allow me to reiterate the first point, that we are implementing competency-based education where competency-based curriculum is just one of the pillars. The other pillars are competency-based pedagogy, which Dr. Nancy Macharia has eloquently talked about. We have competency-based assessment, that's where Dr. Njegere comes in, and we have competency-based infrastructure, where the ministry comes in. But we acknowledge that the root is the curriculum. So without repeating, I want to just outline a few issues that I have seen recently as questions about competency-based education. And the first thing, CS, is to let Kenyans know that there's a philosophy, a global philosophy, well-researched, well corrected out of practice, that underpins competency-based education. And without time to elaborate, allow me to say this is a pragmatist philosophy, and it speaks to 5 issues. One is interest. The fact that a curriculum should be flexible enough to allow learners to pursue their areas of potential and interest. 2 is to infuse as much practicality as possible in our learning. Thirdly is to reiterate the question of values, which I know members of the faith-based society here will confirm we have talked about from inception, And finally, to ask the question of what is the utility of an education we are offering our learners, to them as individuals and also to the country. The second thing to reiterate, colleagues, is that the structure that informs competence-based education at basic level is also well grounded in cognitive developmental psychology. That's why we have 2 years to offer children an opportunity to interact at pre-primary school level, 6 years to give them an opportunity to socialize, especially on the areas of literacy, numeracy, and language. 3 years of junior school to offer learners an opportunity to adventure, to discover their potential, and then 3 years to take a pathway where they can now get more into the depth. And CS allow me to reiterate to Kenyans that at the time we were reforming the curriculum, it was discovered that we were the only country in the East African region that were keeping children in primary school for 8 years. Globally, and this table is on the Odhiambo Task Force report, if you look at some of the countries that we frequently benchmark with, we were the only country keeping learners in school for 8 years. And so it was necessary that we align ourselves to what the rest of the world was doing. And Dr. Jingere would have mentioned his pet subject. The East African Community Protocol also adapted CBE as the default curriculum and agreed in principle, and we are signatories, that no country should keep learners in school beyond 7 years. PS allow me to speak to rationalization. The Presidential Working Party, as the PS mentioned, was informed by views of Kenyans, and I'm happy Professor Odote has just arrived. So we have a member of the Presidential Working Party who was very critical, especially in the curriculum pillar, and they recommended that we should not have more than 5 learning areas at pre-primary school, not more than 7 learning areas in lower primary, not more than 8 learning areas at upper primary, and not more than 9 at junior, and of course not more than 7. Again, the Presidential Party recommendations were very well informed, and we responded immediately as an institute. We have revised the curriculum designs that were on at that time according to the recommendations of the Working Party. And as the PS has said, we have actually proceeded to evaluate curriculum support materials in terms of print materials and digital materials, and in particular, the print materials have been distributed to schools. CS, Dr. Jagere has talked about us believing in ourselves as a country. I want to assure the country that we are just among 3 that I know in the world that distributes textbooks to schools, to their learners in all learning areas on a 1-to-1 ratio. And that as we speak today, 80% of grade 9 books have already been distributed, is something we should be thanking the country for. At some point we were talking about a deficit. Today sometimes CS, you hear them talk about an oversupply. And in junior school in particular, CS and PS have graciously accepted that for every learning area we distribute 2 titles, because then we are opening the spectrum of the teachers. The CBC is based on a globally acknowledged curriculum reform cycle. We reform a cycle at the end of basic education, and we review at the end of every 5 years according to the UNESCO standards. So finally, the only thing I want to talk about is that yes, the curriculum reform in basic education has also been reflected in teacher education. So as we speak today, we have transited CS an extremely big milestone in this country, and I believe we are the first in Africa, I mean East Africa as well, that I'm sure about, that we have transited all the training level now to diploma. We no longer have people who are going to get a certificate to be able to teach. You have to get a diploma to teach at pre-primary, primary, and even secondary level. And that is also consistent because education specialists will tell you at a certificate level, globally, you are expected to be only a teacher assistant and not a full-fledged teacher. And so the country has made huge progress in this direction. Can I close here by saying that this country has spent, up to today, from 2018, 51 billion shillings on textbooks. And as we talk today, 47 billion has been paid to publishers, and the chairman of the Publishers Association is here. They will confirm that for the books that they have delivered, which we have confirmed have reached school, we have made all the payment. Thank you very much, CS.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. So members, as you can see, there is teamwork, and there is a clear indication of the teams working together, from TSC to the ministry to NEC to the curriculum, and things have been thought through. Whether it is the curriculum, whether it is the resources, whether it is the teachers, whether it is the books, whether it is the assessment in the exams, there is a team and there is a cohesiveness of how this is being done. It cannot be gainsaid that in this country, for instance, it is the only country, as far as we know, that is spending over 30% of its budget in the education sector. The UNESCO recommendation is an expenditure of between 4 and 20%. We are at 27% last we checked. And that is a commitment from the government that they want to ensure, or we want to ensure, that our education system is of an international standard. And we are doing everything possible to ensure that we do not drop the ball. I want to open up this now to the plenary for questions or comments or recommendations, suggestions, so that we can together continue refining this sector. What is really critical for us is that we must have an education sector that is completely hygienic and that we can trust. So I'll open up the team with microphones. Raise your hand. We'll take about 3 questions at a time, and then we'll move from there.
Mheshimiwa Waziri, thank you for your presentation, PS and CEO of TSC. I wanted to start by throwing some few stones, but I've disarmed, because I had issues with the books and also with it, but on teachers you have done quite well. That one is actually something that is obvious. It is there to be seen by every Kenyan. But my concern, Honorable Minister, is, you know, the religious sector plays a very critical role as a key stakeholder in education. And in this meeting today, unfortunately, I think we are very few of us here. I just saw other 2 people apart from myself. And that shows, I don't know whether it is how the program was arranged, but it's very, very key that we work together as a country to address the challenges that we have. Mheshimiwa, one thing about CBC is quite an expensive endeavor. It's expensive to parents, and it also, in a way, disadvantages certain section of the communities. I have, for example, you know, in the current education system, the parent does more than the child, because the kind of the homework the children are given to go and print that, bring that, bring that. I can imagine my mother, if I was a child today, to be told to print certain things at home in my rural village, where the printers are not available, there are no smartphones, there is no internet. What exactly are those children going to do? Because if we move that way, then it seems that the education is only going to be for those who are privileged to be members of the society who can actually access those. The second aspect of discrimination in this education system, I can say, I have never been told to print a picture of a lady milking a cow. I can only print some pictures of a swimming pool, print pictures of cars, Some people have never seen cars. Our children in certain areas of this country have not seen the cars. So you can just imagine that situation. If we continue that way, I think we need to do something extraordinary. And my concern, again, is about the construction of classrooms. It is something very good. But why do you divide the resources, the little resources that you have? Instead of the ministry implementing the project, you divide and then decide this amount to be taken by CDF for the CDF to do the same. Don't you find that it's actually, we may be faced with challenges of accountability and also achieving the objectives of the ministry by deliberately giving someone else to do something that you could have actually done and finance it? Thank you.
Thank you. Because of the numbers, we're going to have to limit the questions per person, maybe to a maximum of 2. Can we take that one there, lady in red? And please note the questions, because I'll be having some of you respond to them.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I wish first to appreciate the government's efforts to ensure that CBC is a success in this country. I represent Kenya Private Schools Association, and my question is, we as Kenya Private Schools Association, we do have different cadres of schools, and we have schools that do not have the financial muscle, especially to provide for children in terms of learning resources and materials. My question is it possible for the government to partner with us as private schools to offer these textbooks as the government distributes these schools to the public schools, so that our schools can access these schools at a subsidized rate? The second question is, we have some of our schools that are ready to offer the 3 pathways, that is at senior school. And in some cases, we may be strained in terms of resources. For example, a pathway like arts and sports. Can we also have a modality that we can work together with the government to be able to access their resources? Thank you.
Thank you. The last one up there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, CS. I come from civil society, and our biggest concern about the implementation of CBC is in dropout rates. CS, the previous program, which was the 844, at least the first major transition was being experienced when the child was 14 years. That is when they were going to secondary school. Right now, we are looking at 12-year-olds that want to transition to junior secondary school, and there is a different level of things. There is a whole set of uniform, CS. There is a whole set of school fees. I am aware that for you to access a junior secondary school in Nairobi, you have to pay 10,000 shillings or 15,000 shillings. That is fact from the ground. We cannot have 12-year-olds as dropouts in this country. We want an assurance from you tonight that transiting to junior school is cost-free. When CBC was being introduced, the civil society supported CBC on account of its acclamation that the transition is going to be free, including free from the examination issues where children were being ranked according to their grades. But CBC was promising us as a country that there is not going to be dropouts at this rate. If you look at the structure of CBC, 2 years at preschool, still there is an inconvenience. Transitioning from nursery school in this country to grade 1, there is a hiccup there. So we lose about 20% of those children. Some of them don't know where to go. Then after 6 years again, CS, we are looking at another transition. And later at another 3 years, we will still be looking at another transition. So I think for us as civil society, the biggest thing for us is about policy guidance. What is the ministry saying about this transition? Is it cost-free, as we had been promised as before? And I think the other issue today is about accountability on capitation. I want to confess that the government is doing very well on the construction of classes. I live near a primary school, and I've already witnessed actually 8 classes are coming up. That is very good. And the account we have had from Dr. Nancy and the issues about NEC, really good progress coming up there. How about capitation? When we hear that junior school, the capitation is going to be 15,000, only to confirm from the heads of schools that they receive 4,000 Kenya shillings, I think there is an accountability issue about capitation, because what does it mean when government does not give the right capitation? It means levies. The world over, there is no big barrier to education than levies. So I think those are my two issues, CS. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. We will start with the first question. The gentleman who wanted to throw some stones, but he didn't find them. That's very good. Let's ask that the PS, you can take those questions, and then Dr. Njengele will deal with the issues relating to the cost, but you deal with that one first for the first.
Thank you very much.
question.
I want to thank the chair for the areas that he has raised. I want to assure you that on invitations, we invited the whole cross-section of our colleagues in the religious sector, including the Interreligious Council. So maybe they are still on their way, but we did invite all of us, because we know the role that the religious community is doing in our schools. As sponsors, as spiritual guides, as people who support us, mainly on the mental stages. I remember when we were in the formative stage of CBC, you did so much work on value-based education and why we needed to have value-based education. I would request Prof at some point to talk about parental empowerment and engagement. Because what we are really doing is that we would want to have all of us participate in the growth of our children. And that's why when we request that you work with your child through some of the homework that we do give, then we are doing that so that you can have a closer relationship. You have a closer engagement with the child. But on issues of the type of homework that we gave, what we asked to be printed, what I would ask Professor Ngondo to engage on that one. On construction of classrooms, what we are doing is that we are partnering with the National Government Constituency Development Fund, because it is one of our biggest partners when it comes to issues education. The biggest, almost 80% of the resources that go to CDF is used in issues related to education, and that's why we are partnering with them. But as the CS said, as Ministry of Education, working with our development partners, we are doing and we have done 11,000 classrooms. Our colleagues, the MPs, are doing 6,800. They have already done 3,000. So as we talk today, we have done 14,000 classrooms through that partnership. And we would want to continue engaging and building on trust and the way in which we would want to work so that we can move forward. On Kenya Private Schools Association, Mudhoni will tell you, when we were having the steering committee, the first one, on issues of instructional materials, we agreed that private schools will give us their requirements and that they will get books at cost. We are still there as government. If you give us your numbers, we work with ourselves, we shall make sure that you will get books at the same cost that we give to our public schools, because all these are our children. Let's work together and we shall ensure that the books that is produced will be paid for through a framework, and the children in private schools will get it at the same cost that we are giving to our children in public schools. That still stands, and that commitment by government is still there. The last one is on what Mudhoni has said on issues of dropout and progression. And it is good Bwana Nzioka is here, who is the chair of the Kenya Primary School Aids Association. And you know, when people break the law, and it's good our CS is a lawyer, and he will put it as is that primary education, once you transition to our primary schools, and as per the Constitution, Article 53, I think, is that we are supposed to provide free and compulsory basic education, and mainly primary education. And there should be no fees charged at any point in time. Even when we were transitioning the first group of CAPSEA from grade 6 to grade 7, we said children should use the uniforms that they did have in their primary schools. It is still our stand, and it is still commitment of government, that even if we change uniforms, we should give time to parents to transition to the new uniform at the time that they were to buy new uniforms. It should not be that you transition, and even if you bought uniform when you are at grade 6, that when you go to grade 7 you buy new ones. It should be said that there is transition time, but there should not be any fees. And I am sure CS will still emphasize on this particular issue. It is cost-free. Every progression until that time when now we move from junior school to secondary school, then there will be certain fees that have been agreed on as by claim memorial report by that time. Until that changes, that is the situation. On capitation, we are working very closely with our colleagues at the Treasury. We know that the fiscal space that is there, the challenges that we are facing, but we commit ourselves to our schools that capitation at 22,224 should be that. At 15,043, that is what we should transmit to our junior school. At 1,420 is what we should give, because that is a commitment that we have made to our children, and it is our responsibility to ensure that is done. Let me request Professor Ongondo before Njegere comes in.
Thank you very much, PS, and thank you for that question. Let me start by saying that the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development has developed a book on parental empowerment and engagement, and I'll give you a copy after this in English and translate. There are three critical people in any learning endeavor. There's the child themselves, there's the teacher, and there's the parent. And the PS gave us a journey on how we ended up at CBE. If you were to look at the previous commission, starting with even others before McKay, like Gachathi and Kamunge, most emphasized in the Douglas Odhiambo Commission, one of the serious gaps in our education was the lack of serious engagement between the parent and their children's learning. The curriculum is arranged in such a way that a parent is encouraged to show as much interest as possible in the learning of their children. The assignments that are prescribed in the curriculum designs and even in the textbooks are not anything that any ordinary parent cannot speak to